This could be the moment that changes everything. After failed negotiations and rising tensions, Donald Trump has now signaled a dramatic and potentially explosive move. The United States Navy is preparing to blockade the Strait of Hormuz. And if this actually happens, it won't just impact one region, it could shake the entire global economy. The Strait of Hormuz is not just another waterway, it is one of the most critical choke points in the world. Nearly a fifth of global oil supply passes through this narrow stretch of water every single day. Tankers carrying millions of barrels move through it, connecting the Middle East to the rest of the world. Now imagine that flow being suddenly restricted or completely stopped. That is the scenario now being discussed after talks between the United States and Iran reportedly collapsed without any agreement. According to statements, frustration has reached a peak, and the next step could involve direct naval action. A blockade is not a small move, it is not symbolic, it is one of the strongest actions short of full-scale war. It involves positioning naval forces to control or restrict access to a key route, effectively deciding who can pass and who cannot. If the U.S. Navy moves forward with this plan, it would immediately escalate tensions to a level not seen in years, because from Iran's perspective, this would be seen as a direct act of aggression. And Iran has already made its position clear in the past. It will not allow its access to this vital route to be controlled or blocked without a response. This is why experts are calling this one of the most dangerous moments in the entire conflict, because a blockade does not exist in isolation. It triggers reactions, military reactions, economic reactions, global reactions. At the same time, naval forces in the region are already on high alert. Warships, patrol vessels, and surveillance systems are monitoring every movement. The area is becoming increasingly crowded and increasingly tense. And in situations like this, even a small incident can escalate quickly. A warning shot, a miscommunication, an unexpected movement, any of these could trigger a chain reaction that is difficult to control. But beyond the military risks, the economic impact could be immediate. Oil markets are extremely sensitive to anything involving the Strait of Hormuz. Even the threat of disruption can cause prices to spike. If an actual blockade is enforced, the effect could be dramatic. Oil prices could surge, shipping costs could increase, global markets could react instantly. And these effects would not stay in one region, they would be felt worldwide, from fuel prices to food costs to economic stability. This is why global leaders are watching closely, because what happens next could affect not just geopolitics, but everyday life for millions of people. At the same time, there are still questions. Is this a final decision or a strategic warning? Will there be one last attempt at negotiation, or has the situation already moved past that point? Right now, the answers are not clear. But what is clear is this: the situation has reached a critical moment. The threat of a blockade has been introduced, the stakes have been raised, and the margin for error is getting smaller. Because once a move like this is made, it is very difficult to reverse. And if it leads to confrontation, the consequences could go far beyond anything we have seen so far. This is not just another update, this is a potential turning point. And as the world watches closely, one question remains: what happens next? As the possibility of a U.S. naval blockade becomes more real, the strategic implications begin to unfold. This is not just a military maneuver, it is a move that directly targets one of the most critical arteries of the global economy. The Strait of Hormuz is not wide, not forgiving, and not easily controlled without consequences. It is a narrow passage where tension can escalate in seconds. For the U.S., enforcing a blockade would require a significant naval presence. Aircraft carriers, destroyers, submarines, and surveillance systems would all be positioned to monitor and potentially control movement through the strait. Every ship entering or leaving would become a point of attention. Every movement would be tracked. But controlling a waterway like Hormuz is not simple. It is bordered by Iran, giving Tehran a geographic advantage that cannot be ignored. Coastal missile systems, naval mines, fast attack boats, and drone capabilities all come into play. This is not open ocean, it is contested space. Iran has long prepared for scenarios like this. Its strategy has never been to match power directly, but to disrupt, delay, and complicate operations. In a confined space like the Strait of Hormuz, even smaller forces can have a major impact. This creates a situation where both sides have strengths and both sides have risks. If the U.S. attempts to enforce a blockade, it must maintain constant control. That means round-the-clock operations, rapid response capability, and the ability to handle multiple threats at once. If Iran chooses to respond, it has multiple options. It could deploy naval mines to restrict passage. It could use fast-moving boats to challenge larger vessels. It could rely on missile systems positioned along the coast. Each of these actions carries risk, but also impact. And this is where the danger begins to increase. Because once military forces begin operating in such close proximity, the margin for error becomes extremely small. A warning shot could be misinterpreted, a maneuver could be seen as a threat, a response could escalate faster than intended. This is how conflicts grow, not always through planned actions, but through rapid reactions. At the same time, communication becomes critical. In high-tension environments, even a small misunderstanding can lead to serious consequences. And in a place like the Strait of Hormuz, where multiple forces may be operating at once, the risk of miscommunication is high. And yet, despite all these risks, the pressure to act continues to build. Because from a strategic perspective, controlling the strait would give the United States significant leverage. It would impact Iran's ability to export oil, it would influence global markets, and it would send a strong message about control and capability. But that leverage comes at a cost, because any action taken here does not stay contained, it spreads. It affects alliances, trade, and global perception. And right now, all of these factors are moving at the same time. Beyond the military strategy, the economic consequences of a blockade could be immediate and far-reaching. The Strait of Hormuz is one of the most important oil transit routes in the world, and any disruption, even temporary, can send shockwaves through global markets. Oil traders respond quickly to uncertainty. Even the threat of disruption can cause prices to spike, but an actual blockade would be something entirely different. It would represent a real interruption of supply, and that changes everything. Countries that rely heavily on imported energy would feel the impact almost immediately. Fuel prices could increase, transportation costs could rise, industries that depend on stable energy supply could face new challenges. And these effects would not be limited to one region, they would spread globally. From North America to Europe to Asia, economies are interconnected. When energy costs rise, everything else follows. Production becomes more expensive, shipping becomes slower and costlier, consumers begin to feel the pressure. This is how a regional conflict turns into a global economic issue. At the same time, financial markets would react to the uncertainty. Investors tend to move towards safer assets during periods of instability. Stock markets could become volatile, certain sectors may face pressure, while others, such as energy, could see temporary gains. But overall, uncertainty creates caution. Businesses delay decisions, consumers reduce spending, growth slows. And when that happens on a global scale, the impact can be significant. Governments may attempt to respond, strategic reserves could be released, alternative supply routes could be explored, diplomatic efforts could be intensified. But these measures take time, and in fast-moving situations, time is a luxury that may not be available. This is why the Strait of Hormuz is often described as a pressure point for the global economy, because what happens here does not stay here, and right now, that pressure is building. As tensions rise around the possibility of a blockade, the regional dynamics are becoming increasingly complex. This is no longer just a direct situation between two countries, it's a network of interests, alliances, and concerns that extend across the entire region. Neighboring countries are watching closely. Many of them rely on the same waterways for trade and energy export. Any disruption affects them directly. This creates a situation where multiple actors have a stake in what happens next. Some may push for de-escalation, seeking to maintain stability and avoid disruption. Others may strengthen their defenses, preparing for possible spillover effects. At the same time, military activity in the region is increasing. Naval patrols, surveillance operations, and defensive measures are becoming more visible. This adds another layer of complexity, because with more forces present, the environment becomes more crowded and more unpredictable. Coordination becomes harder, communication becomes more critical, risk increases. And beyond the military aspect, there is also the psychological impact. Populations across the region are becoming more aware of the situation. News spreads quickly, concerns grow, uncertainty affects daily life. This is how tension spreads not just through actions, but through perception. And in a highly connected world, perception can move faster than reality. This is why managing escalation is so difficult, because it is not just about